army of ancient Egypt, forged in bronze and remembered in glory.
What if I told you that everything you believed about ancient Egypt is not the whole truth? What if its greatest achievement was not the pyramids, but a ruthless war machine that held the known world in fear for nearly 3,000 years? We are used to thinking of Egypt as a land of mysterious priests, wise scribes, and pharaohs obsessed with the afterlife. A land of peaceful farmers whose lives were entirely governed by the flooding of the Nile. But behind this facade of gold and sandstone lies another story, a story of iron discipline, brilliant tactics, and legions of warriors whose sandals trampled lands from Nubia to Syria. It was the army that formed the steel backbone upon which the entire power of the Pharaoh's civilization rested, protected the borders, captured immense wealth, suppressed rebellions, and enthroned dynasties. Without the roar of war chariots and the gleam of bronze copses, there would be neither great temples nor tombs filled with treasure. In this video, we will set aside the papyri and look into the barracks and armories. We will trace the journey of the Egyptian army from scattered militias to a professional imperial force. We will learn what they fought with, how common soldiers lived and died, and witness their greatest triumphs. Prepare to see the real ancient Egypt, the Egypt of warriors. Before Egypt created an army capable of conquering empires, it first had to learn to defend itself, and it did so with warriors and weapons that would seem almost primitive to us today. So, what did the army that guarded the builders of the Great Pyramids look like? The answer might surprise you. In that era known as the Old and Middle Kingdoms, a standing army as we understand it today simply did not exist. When a threat arose, a raid by Libyan tribes from the west or Nubians from the south, the pharaoh would issue a command, and the regional governors, the nomarchs, would assemble a militia. Yesterday's peasants, craftsmen, and fishermen would take up arms to protect their homes and fulfill their duty to the God King. After the campaign, they would return to their peaceful lives. Their weaponry was simple but effective for its time. Long spears, large, cumbersome shields of cowhide stretched over wooden frames, and in close combat, the crushing power of stone maces and primitive copper axes. They had bows, but they were simple, and there was no question of swords or protective armor. This was an army of foot soldiers, created not for conquest, but for defense. Their main tasks were patrolling the borders, guarding trade caravans heading to Sinai for copper and turquoise, and conducting occasional punitive expeditions into Nubia. They were defenders, guardians on the walls of the fertile Nile Valley, protecting civilization from the chaos of the desert. This defensive doctrine worked for centuries, but a single blow from the outside, delivered with a weapon never seen before, would change the rules of the game forever and force Egypt onto a new, bloody path. The Great Reform, birth of the imperial army. What does it take for a civilization that has existed for thousands of years to completely change its view on war? The answer is simple: national humiliation. In the middle of the 17th century BCE, catastrophe fell upon Egypt, and its name was the Hyksos. These were not ordinary nomads. The foreign rulers, as the Egyptians called them, came from the east and brought with them something Egypt had never seen before. Their main weapon was a true revolution in warfare, the light and fast war chariot. For the Egyptian infantry, armed with spears and simple bows, the appearance of these mobile fortresses, racing across the battlefield and showering everyone with clouds of arrows, was a shock. The Hyksos also possessed other advanced weapons: powerful composite bows that pierced Egyptian shields, bronze armor, and curved khopesh swords. The slow and clumsy militia army of the Pharaohs was crushed. For the first time in its history, Egypt was conquered, and it fell under foreign rule for a century. But in this humiliation, the seed of the future empire was sown. In the southern city of Thebes, the Egyptian pharaohs did not accept defeat. They did what only a great civilization is capable of. They began to learn from their enemies. The Egyptians didn't just copy the chariots and bows. They perfected them, turning them into the ultimate tactical weapon. And they understood that to operate such complex technology, a militia of peasants was no longer enough. Thus was born the first professional standing army in Egypt's history, an army where service became a prestigious career and the warrior a separate caste. This was a force created not for defense, but for offense. After driving the Hyksos from their land, this new army did not stop at the borders, pushed outward to create an empire and to ensure that no one could ever humiliate the land of the pharaohs again. We've seen how the new professional army of Egypt was born. Now, let's look into its arsenal and see what exactly it used to crush its enemies on the battlefields, from Nubia to Mesopotamia. The main symbol and decisive force of this new army was the war chariot. Forget the heavy Persian or Roman quadrigi. The Egyptian chariot was a marvel of engineering, light, fast, and maneuverable. Carried only 2 men, a driver who controlled the horses, and an elite warrior. Their task was not to ram the enemy line, but to act like the tanks of the ancient world, to race along the flanks, disrupt the enemy's formation, and shower them with arrows from a safe distance, creating chaos and panic before the main attack. The number 1 weapon for the charioteer was the composite bow. This was the true sniper rifle of its era. Made from glued layers of wood, horn, and sinew, possessed incredible power and range, far surpassing simple bows. Its arrows could pierce leather and even bronze armor, allowing the Egyptians to eliminate enemy commanders and elite units before close combat even began. But when it came to close combat, the Egyptian infantry wielded one of the most recognizable and terrifying blades in history, the khopesh. This bronze sickle sword, a hybrid of an axe and a scimitar, was not designed for fencing. It was used to deliver hooking, slashing blows that could bypass an enemy's shield or sever a limb with a single strike. In skilled hands, it was a fearsome weapon, both physically and psychologically. Of course, the core of the army was still the infantry, armed with long spears, battle axes, and large shields. But now it was not just a mob. It was a coordinated mechanism, working in tandem with the chariots. The chariots were the hammer that shattered the enemy's formation, and the infantry was the anvil that finished them off. It was this system of warfare that made the army of the New Kingdom virtually invincible. Great weapons are nothing without the hands that wield them. So who were these men? Who made up the pharaoh's invincible army? What made an Egyptian peasant drop his plow and pick up a spear, knowing he might never return home? The answer: a chance for a better life. If in the Old Kingdom service was a duty, in the New Kingdom it became a career, and one of the few avenues for social mobility. For the son of a common farmer, whose only prospect was a lifetime of labor in the fields, the army offered incredible opportunities: a stable provision of grain, beer, and clothing, and most importantly, a share of the spoils of war. For bravery shown on the battlefield, the pharaoh personally rewarded the best warriors. The most coveted prize was the gold of valor, necklaces in the shape of golden flies, symbols of persistence in attack. A distinguished soldier could receive slaves, cattle, and the ultimate dream, his own plot of land, transforming a poor man of yesterday into a respected landowner. A common foot soldier could rise through the ranks to become an officer, first commanding dozens and then thousands of men. But this dream came at a price. Discipline was ironclad. Recruits were drilled mercilessly, and corporal punishment was common. Life on campaign was harsh. Long marches under the scorching sun, meager rations, disease, and of course, the constant risk of dying in brutal hand-to-hand combat. It was a high-stakes game, but for tens of thousands of Egyptians, this harsh path was the only way to escape poverty and write their names into history. Every great army has its legends, its brilliant commanders, and its decisive battles forever etched in history. For New Kingdom Egypt, the pinnacle of military glory was embodied by two names, Pharaoh Thutmose III and the Battle of Kadesh. Historians rightly call Thutmose III the Napoleon of ancient Egypt. In 30 years of sole rule, he conducted 17 military campaigns and lost none. It was he who transformed Egypt into a true empire. His masterpiece was the Battle of Megiddo. A coalition of Syrian-Palestinian kings rose against him. When his generals advised, taking a long but safe route, Thutmose chose the most dangerous one, a narrow mountain pass where the army could be stretched for miles. He personally led the vanguard, and this daring maneuver brought him victory. The enemy was caught by surprise and routed. Thutmose III was a strategic genius who, through strength and intellect, created the greatest Egyptian empire. But the most grandiose battle in Egypt's history took place almost 200 years later, under Pharaoh Ramesses II. This was the Battle of Kadesh, a true clash of titans, the first world war of antiquity, where two superpowers collided, the Egyptian and the Hittite empires. At stake was control over the entire Near East. An estimated 5,000 to 6,000 war chariots clashed in this battle, an unprecedented force. Lured into a Hittite ambush, Ramesses found himself surrounded and on the brink of annihilation. But he displayed incredible personal courage. He single-handedly fought his way through enemy ranks until reinforcements arrived. The battle turned into a bloody slaughter that produced no clear winner. Although Ramesses proclaimed a great victory on the walls of Egypt's temples, the true result was the first known peace treaty in human history, a treaty between two great powers. Kadesh was the peak, the zenith of Egyptian military glory, after which a long, slow decline began. Even the most powerful empires, sooner or later, decline. For Egypt, whose military might seem eternal, the beginning of the end came from the sea. In the 12th century BCE, the mysterious Sea Peoples, a confederation of warlike tribes, swept away entire civilizations in their path. They crashed upon the borders of Egypt. Pharaoh Ramesses III managed to repel their invasion in a series of bloody battles. On the walls of his temple, he wrote, "I destroyed them, but the victory was bitter." Egypt survived, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. The wars had completely exhausted the treasury and the army. Egypt was forced to abandon its Asian territories and permanently withdraw from grand imperial politics, closing itself off within the Nile Valley. The age of conquest was over, and the world around was changing. The Iron Age was dawning. New predatory empires, Syria, Babylon, and then Persia, built their armies with iron, cheaper, stronger, more abundant than bronze. The once cutting-edge Egyptian army was now becoming obsolete. In the 7th century BCE, the Assyrian kings did the unthinkable. They invaded Egypt and sacked its capitals. And in 525 BCE, the Persian king Cambyses II delivered the final blow, crushing the Egyptian forces. The thousand-year military dominance of the pharaohs came to an end. Weakened by internal strife and exhausted by wars, the great war machine of the past finally ground to a halt. The army of ancient Egypt had traveled an incredible path, from a militia defending fields to a professional force that built an empire. It was the shield that protected a unique civilization for 3,000 years, allowing it to give the world pyramids, hieroglyphs, and great art. And although the swords and chariots of the pharaohs eventually gave way to new empires, their glory remains forever carved in stone and written in the annals of history.